How was ConExpo?
ConExpo is good. So it was interesting to see just like how many people knew about us at BuildWit.
Yeah.
Like, that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
We're all working towards our mission, but you don't ever really know. Like, there's not a good way to measure we're making a difference or people know what we're doing or anything like that. It was good just to see people, stopping us and saying they'd love what we're doing. That was cool. I got to speak about equipment. That was fun. So I got to talk to a group of people about renting versus owning. That was fun. And got to talk to a lot of people afterwards. And since then, I've been able to help some people on that. And it's good.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but the thesis there is a lot of contractors own equipment that they could probably be renting for a far more cost-effective rate.
Yeah. There's times where owning makes sense and there's times where renting makes sense. I think I started out my talk there was like, hey, let's just get this over with. We all like equipment.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's part of the reason we're in this industry. But no, you have that bias. So when you go to purchase equipment, make sure that the bias isn't what's driving that decision-making process.
And that's an interesting thought. I hadn't thought about it from a bias standpoint, that people just like equipment.
Yeah.
And that's also what they're comfortable with.
Yep.
And so they view it as an investment.
Yep.
A lot of times it's not at all an investment.
Yeah. So like if your utilization, now this is speaking of general equipment. So you get into specialty equipment, utilizations can change, but generally if your utilization's not over like 65 to 75%, depending on the piece of equipment, then you are paying more for owning it.
What is that in terms of hours?
It depends on your market. So rental rates change in markets because of how many months there are of good working conditions. If you think about it, you buy a piece of equipment and you depreciate it over 5 to 7 years is probably the most common lengths of time. The number of months that you can work influences how many hours you put on it.
That's interesting.
So like, Michigan, rental rates are significantly higher than maybe the Southwest because Southwest equipment can be on rent 12 months out of the year.
Yeah.
Up there, it might be 7.
But they need the same amount because a 323 excavator costs the same in Michigan as it does in Arizona.
Correct. But you only get 7 hours or 7 months of use.
Yeah.
So that's why it depends on the market. But, say you were, maybe the average in the industry is 8 months. If you try to guess, I guess northern states probably 8 months out of the year that are running equipment.
Mm-hmm.
Southern states, it's probably 9 to 10, depending on rain.
Yeah.
So I would say, I don't know, 1,200 hours roughly. Between 1,000 and 1,200 hours usually, and then it doesn't make sense to own it. It's also interesting. There's just some psychology there. So when you rent a piece of equipment, you want to get it off your job site because you're paying for it.
Mm-hmm.
When you own it, it's okay if it just sits there sometimes.
Well, and a lot of times managers will hoard equipment.
Yes.
Yeah.
Project level management, they want pieces of equipment for when they need them. And since we own it, like, what's the big deal if it sits here, right? Sure. But there's cost of equipment sitting. And so when we did some analysis on this, like just in underutilized assets, we were able to reduce our fleet by a fair amount, and that was part of creating more profitability. So I'm consulting too, which has been fun. So I get to go to contractors all over the country, primarily focused on the Eastern U.S. I have a non-compete in certain states in the West.
Yeah.
And so I've primarily focused on, Texas East. I haven't done anything in Texas, but, maybe Mississippi East.
Mm-hmm.
What's interesting is like, I've kind of had this little calculator put together where we take their rental rates and we compare them to ownership costs to help them see where they're at. And, one client we just saw, like, they had probably not a big company, but they probably had 10% more equipment than they need. And their cash is kind of tight. And it's like, hey, like, we can free up cash, getting rid of those assets. And then you'll have less cash going out the door to maintain assets that are being underutilized. And so it makes a pretty big difference.
That's a huge improvement.
Yeah.
If it's 10%, that's substantial.
Yeah. What I think happens if you think about it, like in most states, there's like this bell curve of work. You like have this peak usually in the summer months.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times we're like, hey, I need equipment. Well, we had to rent whatever in the middle of the summer so we could get through our work. So let's go buy that machine. And I always tell people, don't make equipment purchases based off the peak. It's a bad, philosophy to do that. Like, so we actually targeted owning between 60 and 70% of our fleet, knowing that forecasting, when you buy a piece of equipment, 5 to 7 years is the general depreciation term, and that's probably also the most common finance term that people use.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to finance. So how many contractors know 5 to 7 years out backlog?
I don't think any.
None, right? Yeah. And so if you're planning on the peak, you're making investments that you're saying, I'm going to keep this piece of equipment busy for 5 to 7 years. There's risk in that.
Would you guys RPO a lot?
Though prior to us getting acquired, we didn't RPO a ton. But after being acquired, it became a pretty big part of our equipment philosophy strategy. I think I learned that from the Clyde companies. I think it's actually has a really good place in providing flexibility without, throwing all your money into rent. So, hey, let's rent these pieces of equipment. We have a big job coming up. We're going to need them at the end of the job. Okay, now we see we have another 12 months worth of work. We're going to go ahead and convert them.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
I think RPOs can be really good, especially on, some of these mega projects. It's like almost their entire philosophy on some of them.
That's what I've seen, because it's just so much work that they don't want to go buy all that equipment, but they don't necessarily believe in renting all that equipment either. So that's what I found on all the big projects is almost everything is RPO, which is pretty slick.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if the rental rates or the interest rate that they're charging you or the conversion rate's low, what it does is it allows you to have the upside of paying down that equipment. A lot of these large projects are joint ventures.
Mm-hmm.
And so they'll go in and the joint venture will rent all the equipment. And at the end of the job, they'll say like, this equipment's worth this much. And, say this equipment's worth $2 million and we've paid down $1 million through rent. Now there's $1 million gap, and then they sell off the equipment and the joint venture partners share in those profits. Or the joint venture partners are allowed to buy the equipment at a price.
Sure.
So
yeah, that makes sense.
Interesting.
Yeah, I and even with equipment that you rent too, I've seen it. People do branding.
Yeah,
you can put your sticker on it.
Yeah,
why not?
Yeah, you can.
I
probably shouldn't paint them.
You probably shouldn't paint them, but I used to always assume if somebody's name was on the machine, that was their machine.
Yeah.
Now I don't make that assumption at all, because a lot of times, no, it's not our machine. We just put our name on it. What's a sticker worth?
I think like 10 years ago, there was this construction manager at risk project, and I think it was Aiken Gardner had the project, or Hunter, one of the two. But the other person was doing the pipe for it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was funny. Like for groundbreaking, it was like, this is probably not exactly what it was, but it was like the Hunter machine, but like it was for groundbreaking. So Aiken Gardner went and put like their Aiken Gardner sticker over the Hunter stuff. And then they like got done, and then Hunter went and installed the pipe.
Yeah. It's, as long as you return the machine how you got it, or just return it to them without the stickers on it.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll charge you for the stickers again, but they do that all day anyway.
Yeah.
It works pretty well.
Yeah.
Or I've even seen companies use magnets.
Yeah.
Giant magnets.
Magnets work. You're going to have like that white space usually around them or something.
Yeah.
But still, like if your branding, has that, then have at it.
Yeah. But this goes to the bigger discussion that if the big pressure on the industry is workforce.
Yeah.
We have more work, less workforce. We need to be more efficient, more profitable. If we're more profitable, we have more money to invest in our people.
Yep.
Which then makes us, in theory, more profitable.
Yep.
The profit conversation is interesting because contractors historically are not good at being profitable. Heavy civil contractors.
Yeah, I think the CFMA data for contractors over a period of time probably puts like $100 million heavy civil contractor somewhere around, I don't know, we'll call it 4%.
Which is insane for the risk.
I think so.
Insane. And yet you have a lot of times there's this misconception with the workforce that is, well, whoever owns the company is worth or super rich, balling out every day. We're getting screwed here.
Yeah.
Because of the lack of transparency in the industry, it works against both parties. But both parties are incentivized to make the company more profitable.
Yes.
Or they should be.
They should be.
In the perfect world.
Yep.
But they're, and a lot of times not right now.
Well, I think actually there's one thing that's interesting is I think it's not super common in the industry to have hourly employees be able to participate in bonuses.
Mm-hmm.
And, maybe the rationale there is they get paid overtime. So, that's why they don't need to get incentivized or something like that, I imagine. Plus, there's also a fair amount of companies who have union employees, and that probably gets tricky there. But I do think there should be some discussions about how do we get people to be rowing in the same direction, like have the same incentives. Jim Collins, in one of his books, I think Great by Choice, talks about, I think it was Nucor Steel. And Nucor Steel put in this bonus program that was for hourly people. And it was interesting, like they talk about how like they didn't even have like to regulate or like reprimand employees anymore. It was like all done by the employees because a lot of these people were making, and so it was still, I think it was really easy. Like they could just say like tons per day or something. A lot of these people were making like 50% of their income off of the bonus because they became like one of the best, still this particular plant became one of the best, most efficient producing plants in the country.
Interesting.
So like, if there's a way to help incentivize pipe layers and operators, concrete carpenters, whatever, like finishers to want to have that production and for that to be the focus. I mean, yes, quality and safety are still there. They're assumed that that's going to be met. It'd be interesting to see if we became more efficient. Like construction, I don't have the stat in front of me, but productivity in construction hasn't changed much.
No.
Like at all, hardly.
No, I actually have it cited somewhere. Yeah. It's stayed completely flat.
Which is crazy.
But I do think though, I want to see how that data is worked out. I think a lot of that is down to increased regulation, increased rules. I think that's where all of the productivity is actually coming from. I think we're building things a lot more effectively, but there is so much more paperwork and rules and permits, and there's all of this burden on every job now that's getting, in my opinion, on most jobs, completely in the way of actually building good infrastructure for our society.
Yeah.
I think that is where a lot of the reduction in efficiency comes from.
Yeah, it's interesting. We've gotten so much better at documenting, and we have all these processes that didn't exist. Like when I first started in the industry, GCs, like they didn't even set up their trailers until we were done grading a project.
Mm-hmm.
Like now, you start a project and you have, a trailer complex with multiple PMs, multiple project engineers, multiple field engineers, multiple superintendents, multiple foremen, all watching your work. And it's like, I wonder, none of the buildings we've done, even before all that was in place, had foundation issues.
Sure.
Or, so I wonder, sometimes do we put so much management on a job, but we're not really getting a return on it?
That's the thing. Yeah, I don't think it doesn't increase the value whatsoever. And it's not safety's bad, but projects used to get built a lot faster. Like the velocity at which the Hoover Dam got built, for example.
Yeah.
Absolutely insane. that would never get done this quick today. We could never do that project today.
Even skyscrapers, they were building them incredibly quick.
Yeah. But now there's just a lot more burden. I think that's where a lot of the efficiency comes from. That's where I think for contractors to really overcome the workforce challenge, I do think the burden is not entirely on contractors. I think the burden, it needs to start with, I think there needs to be reforms on how projects are awarded, how they're managed, how our permitting works. I think there's a lot of big issues from the top, from the actual structure of how these contracts work and how the money's awarded.
Yeah, it could be that. I also think there's a big contributor, and that is jobs used to be awarded and they were designed.
Yes.
Right? Like, think about it. Like, nothing was digital. Everything was a set of plans. So like the change of a project was difficult.
Mm-hmm.
It's become so easy now that I feel like designs aren't far enough along when we get started. And I feel like there's so many changes that happen during the project that everyone's always trying to like, oh, this is the 27th set of plans for this project. Like, what came out on these ones that might have changed our scope of work?
Yeah.
I feel like that kind of stuff, if we would slow down and get designs done, I feel like we would speed up actually.
Well, that's where all these accelerated projects gives me a little bit of heartburn. It's just like, why is there so much pressure being applied? And then a lot of people they talk workforce problem with construction. Engineering has the same problem right now. Engineering firms are getting squeezed bad. And you're getting these younger engineers without real world experience now designing big projects that they would have never designed 10 years ago. And that's leading to a lot of issues too. But then the way the contracts work, the way everything's structured, well, it's not my liability. Like, sure, I kind of have my stamp on it, but at the same time, they're so good at just shedding that responsibility that it still falls on the contractor at the end of the day.
Yeah.
A lot of times
they're able to try and push that down depending on like what the contracts are.
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting. This kind of like maybe like highlights just the importance of experience. So, sometimes we in the industry, I think we can be tough on people when they're young. Like, oh, the new guy doesn't know anything. But at the same time, there's also some truth to it.
Mm-hmm.
We just have to find a way to communicate this better. But like there's nothing more valuable than having gone through something.
Sure.
And so finding a way to, as an industry, help people understand the why of what we do and gain that experience, whether it's a contractor or an engineer, it's like one of the things we have to figure out how to do and do it really well over the next 10 years because of the number of people who are going out of the industry who have 30 plus years of experience and they do things in a way that there's a reason, but it's not always apparent.
There's like, when I think about that, one of the big differences I've seen, people that managed through 2008, 2009, 2010, that left a big mark. And people that didn't, I was still in school. I was still young during that time. I don't really know how it worked. Like, I've heard about it from everybody, but I didn't live through it. I didn't manage a business through it. I wasn't in the workforce during it. So I don't have that experience, but you can tell anybody that managed through that time, that left a serious mark that affects how they make their decisions going forward. And you can tell this, like, my generation, we don't have that. And I think we're more bullish as a result, which I don't know if is necessarily always a good thing.
Yeah. I think there's good and bad to it.
Yeah.
So like, one of the things that I've been talking to some people about is how it is that we can help people understand what we think and why we think it. Like, it's funny. I coach football as well. And this last week we were at a football game and one of the other coaches was just laying into this kid.
Mm-hmm.
It was the quarterback. He made a throw, got picked off. He was just met him on the field. Like, why would you throw that? Just very emotional. And like, it like bugged me a little bit. but we're all humans, so it happens.
Sure.
But so I grabbed the quarterback and I just said, hey, listen, let's talk about what happened. And I was like, all right, when you roll out, you're going to throw that pass. You might have to run it once or twice, because right now that defender was staying back on the receiver. He didn't see you as a threat. You didn't run. You didn't have to step up. Once you've ran it once or twice, he'll have to step up. Then you can throw that pass.
Mm-hmm.
So like, hey, now you know, right? You learned the lesson. If I don't set that play up, then I'm potentially putting the team and myself at risk for an interception. Like, that's what coaching's supposed to look like.
Sure.
Not supposed to be screaming like, what the heck are you doing? Why are you doing it? But that's what happens in construction and in coaching all over. And so what I've been talking to people about is types of questions. And so I believe that there's like 3 types of questions, and that each type of question helps in a specific way. So there's first search questions. And so these questions are when you want somebody to be able to learn how to learn, or to find something that there's a yes or a no or a specific answer to it. So for example, you're out on a job site and the foreman calls you up and says like, hey, I need an excavator that can reach 20 feet. What excavator should I get? Whatever, right? Like, hey, good question. I'm going to send you a link to whatever, Cat, John Deere, Komatsu, whatever you operate, Kobelco website. Look on there and see where their digging depth is. They send them it. They search it out. They're like, okay, based off this data, I think I need a 20-ton machine. Great. When I look at it, 20-ton machine will dig, a 15-foot deep flat bottom trench. Is that what you need? Yeah. Awesome. So now you've helped them figure out, hey, next time I don't necessarily even have to call the boss for this because I know how to do it now.
Yeah.
So you've helped them learn how to search out the information. The next types of questions are like analyze questions. So an analyze question is when you help them analyze data. So you ask a question that invites them to think about something. And there's not usually a right or a wrong answer. And you have to be very careful. If you want a certain answer, you can't ask these types of questions. We do it all the time. If you've ever been in a lecture or in a class, somebody will say like, tell me, what do you think something? And that leaves a lot of ambiguity. And so people don't want to respond. And then like people respond and it's not the answer that the teacher wanted. And then it's like in a very passive aggressive way. They're like, thank you, but I was actually thinking this. And then you feel stupid. Yeah. And you don't want to participate. Well, we do this in construction too. So if you're having a similar conversation, maybe with a crew, and you said like, today we're going to be moving the dirt from over here to over here. Why do you think we're going to be working, over here to over here? Like no right or wrong answer. And be ready, because there are going to be answers that aren't exactly what you want. If you have a specific answer in your mind, you can't ask that type of question. But what it does is it starts to let them think about why you might be doing that. And there might be something like, well, we have to do an over X over here. So let's get all of that material out and place it in our fills. And then when we go to cut from over here, we can move it right into our fills. So we'll only move dirt once. Great. That's a great idea. Why else? Why else might you be moving dirt from here to there? Somebody else might say, well, ground conditions are pretty bad right now, and this is the high side of the site, so it's dry. So I think it would be better if we start from over there and take it over there. Great. Any other ideas? Right? And then you might be able to say, well, I think all those answers were awesome. I also think one of the reasons that I would want to haul from here to there is because it's downhill. We'll be hauling loaded downhill. So now they've analyzed kind of the situation, but then they've also got a peek into your brain. And you've said, all of those are good answers. And I want you to know that how I think about this is, this would be important to me.
Sure.
Right. So now you've taught them how to search something out. You've taught them how to analyze something.
But going to that one, you present what your answer is in somewhat of a humble manner.
Oh yeah.
It's not, I know best, because I see a lot of that. you want to make you put your ego ahead of their ego. You want to prove that, well, I'm the boss, and so I know best. And so if you come at it from, well, this is the right answer because I know best, you do more harm than good.
For sure.
Yeah.
Also, like Brene Brown, I think she has been quoted saying something like, if you want innovation, you need vulnerability. Like she like was going to go talk to like a Fortune 500 company, and they're like, what do you want to talk about? And she's like, I want to talk about vulnerability. And they're like, we'd actually rather like talk about innovation. She's like, that's how you get it, by being vulnerable. Mm-hmm. Like innovation is doing something that nobody's done. That starts as a stupid idea half the time.
Yeah. Tell me about it.
Right. And so, when you respond as a leader to somebody sharing an opinion in a way that is like, no, that's not what that's not right. The reason we're going to haul there is because we're hauling downhill. They shared with you what they thought. And if you shut them down, guess what? They're not going to share with you what they think in the future, because you probably belittled them. You probably feel like an idiot. So you're like, no, next time that huddle happens and the boss man asks a question, no, I'm not contributing. And how many huddles or pre-job meetings or whatever you call them have you been to where it's crickets?
Well, because that individual, they make the same amount of money, whether I speak up or not.
Yep.
In theory.
Yeah.
So there's no, if I'm just going to get belittled, I still make the same amount of money. Why would I ever say something?
Yeah.
And I'm underslept.
One of my favorite things is like Foreman saying like, nobody knows what they're doing. It's like, how do we help them recognize if nobody knows what they're doing, then it's not anyone else's fault but their own. And how do we as owners, if we hear that, how does it like, or managers, owners, whatever, how do we like let that kind of like turn a light switch on? Hey, I have a communication issue. I need to improve my morning meetings. That might be through asking questions like this, or it might be through readbacks, probably a combination of both. Real quick though, just so I can finish my thought on the 3 types of questions. The third type of question is apply questions. So it's a question where you allow them to learn something, and then you use what they've learned and help them imagine what the future state looks like. So, maybe you are teaching somebody about loading trucks, and you've asked them to, you've asked an analyzed question about why do you think it's important that you have a bench, and the bench is about, track height's about middle to bottom, top of bed, or maybe it's, why do you think it's important that your swing radius is only, between ideally 30, 40% or 40 degrees? They're like, well, yeah, that's less movement's quicker. Great. So then the follow-up question would be like, okay, so for tomorrow, knowing that you want your bench to allow you to have 30 to 40 degree swing, how do you need to have this cut set up? And then they're going to have to think about it. They're going to be like, okay, well, I need to make sure that my bench is long enough for shift, and I need to make sure that I go down to that end and cut in a ramp for the next slot or whatever. So now you've helped them once again think like you think. You're helping them say, hey, I need to be prepared for tomorrow, today, and this is what I need to do. Then I've taken something I've learned and I've said, okay, now that I've learned it and I've learned what's important, how do I use that tomorrow? So I think just those 3 types of questions and using them well, and it's not like we're talking about and it sounds easy, but I'm telling you it's not. Like if you don't prepare for this, if you don't practice asking questions, you will not do it. You will not do it well. You will ask questions and they'll be closed-ended. You'll ask questions and you'll get an answer that you didn't want, and you'll respond in a way that shuts down innovation. Like one of the biggest things that you can do when it comes to this is recognize, if you ask a question, you say, hey, I'm going to allow for there to be 10 to 15 seconds of silence, or I'm going to allow there to be silence because we need input. That's okay. If you still aren't getting responses, or the responses you're getting aren't in line with what you wanted, take ownership of it. Like, you know what? Let me reword that question. That was a dumb question. Like, that's okay.
Yeah.
Put it on you. Like, hey, that was a stupid question. Let me try that again.
Well, which is vulnerable.
Yeah.
Which at face value you think makes you appear weak, but it actually makes you appear a stronger leader. As, oh, okay, so the boss is vulnerable, so that I can be vulnerable, and you're giving those around you permission to also be vulnerable. And you're the boss. You have that responsibility. So you're the one that has to go first. Don't expect that behavior to be modeled if you're not doing it first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like in my head, this is what I'm thinking. Bosses don't make mistakes, air quotes.
Uh-huh.
Leaders do. Right? Like that's the difference in my mind between leaders and bosses is like leaders own up to their mistakes. They know them. They're transparent about them. And they say like, I want everyone to learn from my mistakes. And I want everyone here to be able to share their mistakes so everyone here can learn from them.
Yeah.
Like I want the next day, hey, what was the lesson? What was something you learned yesterday? I want someone to be able to say like, well, I put a gash in the tire because I didn't, when I came into the pile to load the shot rock, I didn't get enough weight on my bucket before I applied more power to the machine, and my tire slipped, and I gashed the tire.
Mm-hmm.
Like, guess what? That guy who's new, who's overrunning the crusher, he's the laborer who's helping clean up the crusher. Just learned something.
Yeah.
So hopefully, when he goes to run the loader for the first time, he's going to remember, hey, that tire cost a lot of money. And it got tore up because he didn't load the bucket before he really pushed into the pile.
Well, and then that goes from just an expensive mistake to a lesson.
Yep.
You're getting an ROI. You're spending the money regardless.
Yeah.
You still need to replace that tire.
Yep.
Or whatever it is. Might as well make everybody learn from it.
Yeah. That's what's been so interesting about coaching is like, coaching to me is really what we should be doing as leaders in the industry. In this example of the one football coach who was yelling at the quarterback, it's like the interception happened. Like we can't change it.
Yeah.
So like we can just yell about it, or we can all like dig in and learn like why did this happen and how do we do it better and how do we share that with everybody. And I think we just so often that's not what happens in construction.
So this all goes to a lot of this is, if not all, is leadership.
Yes.
Leadership is influencing human behavior.
Correct.
And everybody at the end of the day is a leader. But I think the workforce challenge we're facing, the dirt world's facing, will be overcome by leaders.
Correct.
We have an event coming up this fall on this exact topic. And I have extraordinary bias, but I think it will be the best leadership conference event that this industry has ever seen.
Yeah. I mean, I probably have a bias too, right? Because I helped plan some of this.
Yeah.
But the lineup is incredible. So I've done a muster with Echelon Front, and I've done an FTX with them.
Yeah.
Both of which have been extremely valuable leadership events for me.
Yeah.
We have like a mini muster at the start of our event. So we get to have the Echelon Front team, Jocko, Jamie, JP there to talk
Cody
to us
will be there. Yeah.
and help us learn extreme ownership principles.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next day, the lineup is just as crazy.
Yeah, people ask me what books do I recommend.
Yep.
I recommend Extreme Ownership. I read every day. I read a lot of books. Extreme Ownership, hands down. Okay, we have Echelon Front coming in to teach those principles.
Yep.
How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. We have Joe Hart, CEO of Dale Carnegie, coming in to speak the next day. Everybody Matters by Bob Chapman. We have Bob Chapman coming in. No joke. These are the books that I have used to inform the entirety of my life. And these are the people coming to teach leadership principles to anybody there. And when I talk about this, so it's not, I think you'll be talking, or
I'll be leading one of the groups.
You'll be leading one of the groups, and that group is stacked. Like, we're not even touching on most everybody there. It's stacked, and I don't even want to get into it because I don't want to leave people out.
Yeah.
But I don't even think I'm talking, or I might be.
I think you might be
talking
a little bit.
during a meal or something like that. But Dan was smart enough to save the actual stage time for professionals that were the best we could find in not construction, just period. And then the best in construction as well.
Yeah.
Like we have Wally, Jason, Dave Turin, long list there from industry specific individuals as well.
Yeah.
And people ask me when I talk about it, well, who should go? If you are or want to be a leader in this industry, it applies to you. You could be a foreman, you could be a truck driver, you could be president of a company. I don't think it's for one kind of person. We're not aiming to attract just CEOs of companies. That's great, but I would like potentially truck drivers to be there as well. And I know there's a substantial cost, but it's around $2,500 roughly. Might be a little bit more than that. So you're going to have to belly up to the bar a little bit here, but the value, I don't stress about charging that kind of money because the value will be more than there.
Well, I think some of the things that we've talked about, I think the best. So after Clyde purchased us, we did an FTX with BuildWit, and I think brought 6 people. And there's something about going to a leadership conference that's motivating, energizing, but it's even better when it's with multiple people in your company. We were able to then do a debrief, talk about it, and then we talked about the things we learned for years. And the only thing I regret was that there wasn't more people. Like we talked about, like, how do we get more people to go do this FTX, which there is an opportunity to have an FTX before the conference. It's a small group, I think 30 people maybe.
Yeah, it is small.
But that stands for field training exercise, right?
Yep.
Super cool thing. But so I think, the Dirt World Summit, if you can have multiple leaders, I think maybe in my mind, that's where you get a better return because now you have more people who they learn different things. They can share, they can hold each other accountable. It's really powerful.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, they think about it in terms of traditional construction conferences. Yeah, we'll send, one person.
Yeah.
Because that's the value. They'll kind of figure out what went there and then they'll bring it back. But with this kind of conference, it's going to be so intense in the best of ways that the more people are there, the more benefit you're going to gain.
The other thing is like, so a lot of people in construction know of Echelon Front and Extreme Ownership.
Mm-hmm.
A lot don't, but I think that construction industry is like their number 2 industry, if I remember right. Like the one they work with the most.
Yeah.
Not as many people know, Marcus Sheridan.
Marcus Sheridan's another one.
Yeah.
I told you I'd be forgetting people.
Yeah. Or like, Bob Chapman or Dale Carnegie's CEO. Like they might not be as popular in the construction industry. And that's one of the things that I think we really worked hard to is like, how do we help bring diversity in thought? Right? Like, let's bring thought leaders who maybe aren't popular here, but are popular in other industries and are doing great things so that we can improve and provide diversity in our thought. So, like Marcus Sheridan, we shot leadership with him probably 2 years ago. It's on our training platform. I think you can actually go to our website and see some of it still for free. I thought I learned from Marcus Sheridan as much as I have from anybody. Like being there with him, incredible.
Yeah.
And the way that he talks about marketing really is like, how do we market to the next generation? So it really, not only is he a great leader and has great lessons on leadership, but he also has these lessons on marketing that apply to finding people, because that's what we're doing. We're marketing to our future employees.
Well, and even if you're a young person, the reason why I started started posting on social media was to make myself more marketable, to make me as an individual more valuable to future employers.
Yeah.
That was it. That was my play. Oh, I need to establish a personal brand. So the principles even apply. Okay, great. Your company won't allow you to do the marketing. Okay, yeah, that's fair. But you can still apply these same principles to making you as an individual more valuable.
Yeah.
Which benefits everybody, starting with you.
Yeah. And your company.
And your company.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's all at dirtworld.com.
Yep.
Where our intent is to sell this thing out as quickly as possible.
Yeah. I mean, our hope is that, we're sold out by end of June.
Yeah.
Which is, probably a pretty quick speed to be sold out, but there's only 1,000 slots, and we think there's enough people in the industry who are excited about this, that they'll get signed up. And it's the end of October. So, it's kind of a hard time. It's hard to find a good time for a conference because construction is always busy.
Yeah.
But, what we came to was with Jocko's schedule, because, having him at a mini mustard is tough. We really only had these dates, and we felt like it was late enough in the season that hopefully some of the push for jobs has started to wind down. We know there will still be some hanging out there, but the investment in your people will pay dividends, we think.
And you'll be there to do meet and greet, right?
I'll be there to do meet and greet if you want to meet me.
Okay. Yeah. So if you're interested, dirtworld.com. No nonsense. We're not selling snake oil here. This will be world class. I cannot wait. Me selfishly, I've started to get excited about it now that the promotion's coming out. I'm like, so I get to hear all of this.
Yeah.
I get to be a part of this conference. That's crazy.
That was actually one of the things I thought was really cool was Marcus Sheridan. He was like, so Marcus Sheridan, for those who don't know him, like this guy speaks all over the world.
Yeah.
Like when it comes to marketing, like this guy is top 5 probably. Like this is the guy you want to have at your conference. He messaged us and said, I'm rarely, if ever, excited about a conference, so much so that he's bringing his people.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
So he's going to bring, I think, 2 or 3 of his people to come to the conference.
Sure.
So exciting.
Okay. Well, there you had it. Dirtworld.com. We'll see you there October in Houston, Texas.
Yep.
And that's the podcast. So thanks for listening, everybody. Thanks for stopping by, Randy.
No problem.